The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves through the open kitchen window as Gayan Mitchell stirred honey into his morning coffee. He watched the silver spoon clink against the ceramic as he thought about surprising his wife Romy with tickets to that new play. She'd been going to the Westbrook Theater for about 15 years now, and he still got a kick out of making her smile. That smile had captured his heart in college. It was bright and genuine, lighting up her whole face. The sound of running water and childish giggles drifted down from upstairs. Emma is 6 and Lucas is 7. Old Lucas was racing through their morning routine. Emma's voice carried clearly to Lucas. "That's my toothbrush, not yours, it's the blue one." Gayan smiled, shaking his head. Their familiar caves wrapped around him like a comfortable blanket. It was as predictable as the sunrise. He lifted the steaming mug to his lips, savoring the perfect balance of bitter coffee and sweet honey. "Dad, Emma's?" Galen heard his son's voice calling down from upstairs. "Lucas won't give me back my hairbrush." "I'm using it," he said. "You don't even have long hair," Galen replied. He put his mug down on the granite countertop with a soft click. "Give your sister her brush." "Use your own, buddy," he said. The sound of small feet overhead continued, punctuated by more squabbling. This was his life, stable, predictable, happy. The mortgage on their the Colonial was manageable. The kids were healthy, and his job as an architectural engineer at Henderson and Associates kept them comfortable. They weren't living some wild romantic fantasy, but they had built something real, something solid. Kid's voice carried down the stairs, followed by more giggling. 5 minutes until we leave, Emma, your lunch is packed. Lucas, don't forget your science project, but Mom, it's not finished. What do you mean it's not finished? You worked on it all weekend. Galen took another sip of coffee, checking his watch. He should head out soon. He had an early meeting with clients about the new downtown development. The kids came bursting into the kitchen, backpacks bouncing. Emma's dark curls were still untamed, forming a wild halo around her face that reminded him of Romy's sister. Lucas had his shirt on backwards, the tag sticking out under his chin. Galen chuckled, kneeling to help Lucas with his shirt. "Get this sword out." "I did it myself." Lucas protested even as he lifted his arms to let his father help. "I'm getting better at it, and you did a great job. It just needs a little tweaking." Galen quickly fixed the shirt, then pulled both kids in for a quick hug. The scent of children's shampoo and toothpaste enveloped him. "Have a good day at school, both of you." "School monsters, Lucas. What's this about your science project?" Lucas scuffed his sneaker against the floor. "I still need to color the solar system labels. We'll work on it tonight." "Okay, right after dinner." "I promise." Galen ruffled his son's hair. "Now go get your shoes on." Emma lingered, her brown eyes so like his own, serious. "Daddy, can you help me with my math homework tonight too?" "We're doing actions and they're hard, of course." "Princess, we'll tackle it after Lucas's project." Romy appeared in the doorway. Her honey blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she was wearing one of her tailored charcoal business suits. Something seemed off about her expression, and there was a tightness around her eyes. Her eyes, which hadn't been there before, had appeared out of nowhere. She'd been distant lately, distracted. Gayan had put it down to stress at her law firm, where she'd recently made partner, but now he wondered if there was more to it. "We need to talk tonight," she said, not quite meeting his eyes after the kids are in bed. A cold flutter worked its way through him. Galen asked Romy if everything was okay. She said that they needed to discuss a few things. He watched her gather the kids' lunch boxes from the counter. She moved quickly and efficiently, as if she didn't work late. He promised to watch as she herded the children toward the garage. "Hey Romy," he said, pausing and turning halfway. "I love you," she replied, and something flickered across her face. Her face was in pain. She managed a tight smile before saying, "I love you too." The garage door closed behind them with a soft click that somehow felt ominous. Gayan stood in the suddenly quiet kitchen, his coffee growing cold. What had happened to them? When had his wife started looking at him like he was a stranger? The workday crawled by. By the time he got to his morning meeting with the developers, it was already lunchtime, but Galen barely tasted his food. He was staring at the blueprints without really seeing them, his mind spinning through possibilities. Was it about her job, money, the kids? They'd been talking about trying for a third child. Maybe she'd change her mind. Earth to Galen, his colleague Marcus said. Colleague Marcus waved a hand in front of his face. You in there, Galen? Galen blinked, focusing on the conference room around him. Sorry, what did you say? If you wanted to grab a drink after work, that new brewery opened up downtown. Can't tonight? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh, the dreaded we need to talk. What did you do? Nothing, as far as I know. Galen managed a weak smile. Probably just stuff with the kids. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it was something bigger, something worse. By the time he got home that evening, his nerves were raw. The house smelled of garlic and tomatoes. Ryan's signature pasta sauce was bubbling away on the stove. The kids were at the kitchen table. Emma was working on her homework while Lucas colored furiously on what looked like a poster board covered in wobbly planets. Ryan jumped up, waving his marker. I'm almost done, he said. I just have to finish Jupiter. Galen examined the project. He was genuinely impressed. Pride was warmed by the praise, and he looked good, buddy. Those rings around Saturn are perfect. My mum helped with those, Lucas admitted, but I did all the coloring, and I think I did a great job. Galen gave his shoulder a squeeze before moving to kiss the top of Emma's head. How's the maths coming, Princess Emma? Fractions are stupid, why? Can't numbers just be whole? He laughed. We'll work on it after dinner, okay? Dinner was a blur of pasta and kids' stories about their day. Emma had aced her spelling test. Lucas had traded his cookie for Michael's pudding cup at lunch. Normal, everyday things that suddenly felt precious, though Galen couldn't say why Romy was quiet throughout. The meal was more about moving her food around than eating it. When she did speak, her voice was carefully modulated, as if she was rehearsing lines for court. Finally, after helping with homework and tucking both kids into bed with stories and kisses, Galen found Romy waiting in their bedroom. She was perched on the edge of their king-size bed. She was still in her work clothes, sitting on the bed with her legs crossed. Galen, I've been thinking a lot lately, she said, her voice carefully controlled. He settled beside her, leaving space between them. The mattress dipped slightly under their combined weight. About us, about our marriage, she said, twisting her wedding ring. It's a nervous habit she's had since their wedding day. The diamond caught the light from their bedside lamp, throwing tiny rainbows on the wall. I love you, you know that, but lately I've been feeling stuck. It's like we're in a rut we can't get out of. We can plan more date nights. Galen offered quickly, his heart pounding. Take that trip to Europe we've been talking about. We've been talking about it. I know things have been busy with your partnership and my new projects. It's not about date nights. Romy stood pacing to the window outside. The street lights cast long shadows across their carefully maintained lawn. I've been reading about different ways couples keep their relationships fresh. There's this concept called ethical nomi. The words hit Galen like a physical blow. He said, You want to sleep with other people? She replied. Not exactly. She turned to face him. Her expression was earnest. It's about opening our marriage. Exploring new connections while maintaining our primary relationship. It could make us stronger. Help us appreciate each other more. Galen's chest felt tight. His chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around his ribs. I'm serious about this. I am. She took a step toward him, then seemed to think better of it. Think about it. We married young. Neither of us had many other experiences. Don't you ever wonder what else is out there? No. The word came out hard, harder than he intended, but I couldn't soften it. I don't wonder, Ree. I chose you. We built this life together. We have children. The kids wouldn't have to know. We'd set boundaries and rules. Galen stood, anger rising in his throat. Rules about how you can interact with other men while I'm at home with our children. Don't be crude. Romy snapped, her careful composure cracking. This isn't about sex. It's about growth and exploring different aspects of ourselves. It's about wanting to cheat with permission. He ran a hand through his dark hair, trying to keep his voice down. The kids were asleep just down the hall. The answer is no, absolutely not. If something's missing in our marriage, we can work on it together. I'm not going to agree to share my wife. You're not even trying to understand what he said, that our vows meant nothing to you, that 15 years of marriage isn't enough, that our family isn't enough. That's not fair. What's not fair is you trying to legitimize adultery by dressing it up in fancy terms like ethical non-monogamy. He said, there's nothing ethical about betraying your spouse. Romy's face hardened for a moment before smoothing into a neutral expression that reminded him of her courtroom demeanor. Okay, you're right, I shouldn't have brought it up. Let's just forget about it. But Galen couldn't forget over the next week. He noticed things he'd been blind to before, like how Romy's phone was always. She'd started taking calls in another room, and her voice was too low to hear. She was wearing silky blouses and skirts that showed more leg than her usual conservative suits. She'd been at the gym for extra time, and she was staying up late at the office. There was another deposition that evening, and he asked her when she called to say she'd be late. She replied smoothly, "We've got that big murder case coming up." He watched Emma and Luke playing candy. Land on the living room floor, don't work too hard. I won't kiss the kids. But there was something off in her voice, a slight tremor, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. Then came the morning that shattered everything. Galen was running late for work, rushing through his morning routine after oversleeping. His electric razor slipped from his grasp, clattering into the bathroom trash can. He muttered under his breath as he bent to retrieve it. When he saw it, wrapped in toilet paper but unmistakable, a used condom, his world tilted sideways. He and Romy hadn't used condoms in years, not since they decided to have Emma. He carefully extracted it using a tissue. The size, the brand, nothing familiar, nothing that belonged in their home. B. rose in his throat as reality crashed over him. She'd done it anyway, after he'd said no, after 15 years of marriage, after everything. They'd built their home together. She'd brought another man into their bed, their bathroom, and their home. The worst part was the carelessness of it. She hadn't even tried to hide it properly. Was it a mistake, or had she wanted him to find it? Some twisted way of forcing the issue? He spent the morning in a fog, going through the motions at work while his mind raced. The evidence sat in his briefcase, carefully sealed in a plastic bag. Every few minutes, his hand would brush against it. By the afternoon, he couldn't take it anymore. He called Ree's office, Mitchell and Associates. Her secretary's cheerful voice made him even more nervous. "Put my wife on the phone," he said. There was only a brief pause before Romy's voice came through. "Galen, what's wrong?" "I need to see you," he said. His voice was tight with controlled fury. Now. He had a deposition all afternoon, so he cancelled them. "I need to see you," he said. "Be home in 30 minutes. He heard her sharp intake of breath. 30 minutes, he repeated. "Romy, or I start calling everyone we know to tell them what their perfect power couple friends are really up to." She was home in 25 minutes. Galen was waiting in the kitchen. The condom was sealed in a plastic bag on the counter between them. Romy's face went pale when she saw it, all the blood draining from her cheeks. "I want to explain," she said. His voice was deadly quiet. "It's not what you think." He slammed his hand on the counter, making her jump. The sound echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. "Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after this. You wouldn't listen." Tears sprang to her eyes, but he felt no sympathy. "You wouldn't even consider what I was asking for, so you just took it anyway." The rage in his chest threatened to choke him. "Who is he?" "That's not who he is." The words echoed off the kitchen walls. The words echoed off the kitchen walls. "I can't." She wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller somehow in her expensive suit. "Please, Galen. Can't we just work through this? Go to counseling?" He laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. Counseling? You want to talk about counseling? Another man in our home? I love you, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. This doesn't change that. He picked up the bag containing the condom. Then you won't mind? If I find out who he is, I'll let you know. The color drained from her face completely, leaving her pale as a ghost. You wouldn't watch me. He pocketed the bag, his hand steady despite the tremors of rage coursing through him. When I find out who it is, everyone else will too. Your parents, our friends, your precious law partners, everyone will know exactly what kind of woman you really are. Gallum, please. He held up a hand, cutting off her words. I'm getting the test didn't do anything. You say you'll change, but I don't believe you. You need to go back to work and back to him. I don't care, but know this, when I find out who he is, there will be no counseling, no second chances, and no reconciliation. You did this. You destroyed everything we built, and you'll live with those consequences. What about the kids? Her voice cracked. Think about what this will do to them. Don't use our children as shields. His voice was calm. You should have thought about that. He left her standing in their kitchen, tears streaming down her face, after walking out without a word. He didn't feel sorry for her and was determined to uncover the full extent of her betrayal. The next week was torture for Gayan, who went through the motions of normal life, working, helping with homework and making small talk at dinner. But inside he was dying every time he looked at Romy. Every time she touched him, he had to resist the urge to recoil. The kids noticed something was wrong. Emma asked why Mommy and Daddy weren't talking. Lucas wanted to know why Daddy wasn't sleeping in their room anymore. It was just grown-up stuff. Galen would say, trying to keep his voice light. Nothing for you to worry about, he'd say. But there's so much to worry about every night. Galen lay on the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling. He wondered how his life he'd imploded so completely he'd sent the DNA sample to a private lab, paying extra for rushed processing. The waiting was excruciating. You've seemed distracted lately, Marcus commented at work. Everything okay at home? Gayan forced a smile. Just busy with the Thompson project, right, Marcus? Didn't look convinced. Well, if you need to talk, I'm fine. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The weekend came, bringing with it their regular Sunday family dinner. Galen was almost canceling, but the kids were looking forward to seeing their grandparents and their uncle. Tate arrived early as usual, bearing gifts for the kids. Emma and Lucas rushed to greet him, squealing with delight. Gayan watched from the doorway as his brother scooped up the kid in his arms. He saw his brother's eyes flicker to Roy, but he missed it. Hey, big brother Tate, how's work? Fine, Galen replied. Kids, why don't you go show Uncle Tate your new toys? As they dragged Tate upstairs, Galen caught another glance between his brother and his wife. Something in their body language set off warning bells, but he pushed it away. He thought away, surely not. The email from the lab arrived Monday morning while he was in his office. His hands trembled as he clicked the attachment. The first page was technical jargon, genetic markers and probability ratios, but there, highlighted in yellow, was a name he'd known his whole life, Tate Mitchell, his younger brother. He whispered, No. But the evidence was irrefutable. The DNA from the condom matched his brother's profile with 99%. Galen stared at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. Tate, his own brother, the same brother who'd been best man at his wedding, who came over for Sunday dinners, who his kids called Uncle Tate. His mind raced back through the years, the lingering looks, the chance encounters, the way Tate always seemed to. I know Ryan's schedule, but there was more. The lab report continued, revealing something that turned my world completely upside down. The DNA showed a partial match, not just to the sample in the condom, but to Emma and Lucas, my children. My beautiful, precious children weren't mine at all, they were Tate's. The realization hit me like he was so shocked, he barely made it to his waist before throwing up. His whole body was shaking with rage, grief, and betrayal. For at least 8 years, Romy and Tate had been lying to him. Every Sunday dinner, every family vacation, every moment he'd spent loving those children. All of it was built on lies. Images flashed through his mind: Emma's first steps, Lucas learning to ride a bike, countless bedtime stories and homework sessions. All those precious moments, and he'd been living someone else's life. Playing father to his brother's children. Mr. Mitchell, his assistant, came through the intercom. "Your 10 o'clock is here, cancel everything." He called the Crow family emergency. He sat at his desk until it got dark, letting the truth sink in. His marriage was a sham. His brother was a traitor. His children. God, his children. What was he supposed to do with this knowledge? His phone buzzed with a text from Ree. "He's coming home soon. The kids are asking for you." The kids. His kids, but not his kids. He'd never really been there for his kids. He was always working late. His fingers were numb. He didn't wait up. Another text came through from Tate. It said, "Hey bro, want to grab lunch tomorrow? It's been a while since we've had some brother time." Galen stared at the message, his throat tightening. He hadn't been his brother's brother for nearly a decade. He hadn't been a father to his kids. Galen had raised as his own. He turned off his phone and sat in the darkness, letting the pain wash over him. As the hours passed, though, something else began to take shape in his mind, a plan. They thought they'd gotten away with it all. They thought they could keep living their perfect little lives. His wife and his brother were playing their roles in this twisted farce. While he remained oblivious, they had no idea what was coming. He would make them pay, not just for the affair but for every lie, every manipulation, every moment they'd stolen from him. They'd taken everything from him. Now he would take everything from them. Galen stared at the DNA test as the sunrise painted his office in shades of blood red. The results were in, and they were clear, 99%. Coffee had grown cold beside him, untouched since his secretary had brought it hours ago. His fingers traced over Tate's name on the screen, each letter a fresh wound. 8 years of lies, 8 years of Sunday dinners, family vacations, and birthday parties. All while his brother played uncle to his own children. There's a 9% chance that the same blood that ran through Tate's vein also ran through Emma and Lucas. After all, it had betrayed him twice over, through his wife and through his brother. His office phone buzzed, interrupting his dark thoughts. "Mr. Mitchell, your brother's here to see you." Galen's jaw clenched. Perfect timing. "Send him in, Sarah, and hold all my calls, even the Thompson. The development team has been calling. There's no room for argument there." Tate strode through the door moments later, all smiles and wearing one of those tailored suits he loved to show off. "Hey big brother, you've been dodging my calls. You've been busy, right?" Tate settled into the leather chair across from Galen's desk, crossing his ankle over his knee with casual ease. "Romy mentioned that things have been tense at home." The casual mention of his wife's name sent a rush of emotion through Galen. His fingers tightened on his mouse. "Oh, you and Romy talk about me often," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of frustration. "Come on, she's worried about you. We all are." Tate leaned forward, looking concerned. "My mum's been calling me every day, asking what's wrong. You've missed 2 Sunday dinners in a row. I didn't realize my attendance was mandatory." "It's not, but it's not like you to miss them." Galen studied his brother's face. Tate had the same dark hair and strong jaw that they'd inherited from their father. Did Emma and Lucas share those features? How had he been so blind? "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" Galen's voice was conversational. "That summer when we were kids, you stole my baseball card collection." Tate blinked at the sudden change of subject. "What do you remember?" "My Mickey Mantle rookie card went missing. You swore you didn't take it, even when Dad found it. It's hidden in your sock drawer. We were kids, you looked me right in the eye and lied." Galen's smile didn't reach his eyes. Things never changed. The color drained from Tate's face. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing." Galen waved his hand dismissively. "It's ancient history. You're right, I've been distant. How about we have dinner this weekend? You, me, Romy, the kids like old." Tate's expression showed relief, although a hint of unease remained. "That would be great on Sunday." Galen's smile was sharp and uneasy. Let's have wine. We've got a lot to celebrate: life, family, and the truth. Each word dropped like a stone. All those important things after Tate left. Galen pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd saved days ago. Davidson. Galen Mitchell here. I need to get my hands on as much info as you can give me on my wife and brother's relationship. Phone records, credit cards, statements, hotel stays, anything that proves they've been seeing each other. I want dates, times and places, and I want photos. I know surveillance isn't cheap, but I want it done discreetly. Money's not an issue. Galen's voice was cold. Just give me proof and make sure it's detailed enough to stand up in court over the next few weeks. Galen became an actor in his own life. He played the role of devoted husband and father while gathering evidence of their betrayal. Every morning he kissed Romy goodbye as if nothing had changed. Every evening he helped with. He did the homework and listened to the kids' stories, but his heart was getting harder and harder. One evening, Lucas called to ask if he could try a cartwheel in the backyard. The boy tumbled sideways and ended up in a giggling heap. He almost got it. The words tasted like ash in Galen's mouth. How many times had Tate done cartwheels like that as a kid? Emma looked up from her math homework. At the kitchen table, can you help me with these fractions, Dad? Of course, Princess. I wiped down the counter, not looking at her. Maybe I just realized what's important, Galen. About what happened, it's water under the bridge. He cut her off with a wave. We all make mistakes, right? The hope that bloomed on her face made him sick. She stepped closer, laying a hand on his arm. I know things have been strained, but I really think we can. He jerked away from her. Touch me. Don't. Don't touch me. His voice was low and dangerous. Don't pretend you care. Don't act like anything you say matters anymore. I do care. Tears filled her eyes. Whatever you think, this isn't about what I think. This is about what I know. Before she could respond, Emma's voice called from upstairs. Mom, I need help with my... Romy hesitated, torn between her daughter's call and the conversation. Galen turned away. Your daughter needs you. You didn't miss how she flinched at the emphasis on your name. A week later, the first package from Davidson arrived. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Tate and Ree meeting for lunch at secluded restaurants. Entering hotels. Kissing in parked cars. The stamps went back years. One photo showed them at the park where Galen had proposed, and another caught them leaving the hotel where he and Romy had spent their honeymoon. Each image was a deliberate desecration of his memories. Galen spread them across his office desk, arranging them chronologically. It was a timeline of betrayal, documented in full color. His phone buzzed with a text from Romy. There's a dinner with your parents tonight. Your mom's been asking about you. He looked at the photos again. There was one from their anniversary dinner last year. He'd been waiting at the restaurant for an hour, thinking Romy was stuck in court. She'd been in a hotel with Tate. Sounds great. He texted back, I'll pick up one on the way home. The family dinner was an exercise in self-control. Galen observed his parents interact with their grandchildren, Emma and Lucas, but not in a way that was particularly focused on them. Tate played the role of a loving uncle while stealing glances at Romy across the table. Tate's mother passed a bowl of potatoes to Romy. Are you eating enough? You look thin lately, she said. I'm just busy with work, Romy replied, smoothing her napkin. A big case is coming up, she added. All you two do is work, his father grumbled. Cutting into his roast beef, Galen said, What are you giving us more grandchildren? His fork clattered against his plate. Actually, I've been thinking about family lately. His mother brightened. Oh, Galen, you took a slow sip of wine, savoring the moment. About legacy, blood, what we pass on to our children. Galen saw Romy and Tate exchange quick glances. He continued, his voice deceptively casual. Remember that. I got you a genetic testing kit for Christmas, Mom. I finally used it and found out some fascinating things about our family history. The color drained from Tate's face, and Ree's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. His mother leaned forward, interested. Like what? Oh, just some surprising connections. Galen's smile was razor sharp. Did you know that genetic traits can skip generations? Sometimes, the most interesting. We can't always predict where features will come from. Galen Tate's voice held a warning. Something's wrong. Brother, Galen tilted his head. You look pale. Not feeling well? I think I should go. Tate stood abruptly. Early meeting tomorrow, but you haven't had dessert. Their mother protested. I made your favorite apple pie. Another time. Tate kissed her cheek, carefully avoiding Galen's gaze. Thanks for dinner, Mom. Later that night, Ree confronted him in their bedroom. What are you doing? Getting ready for bed. Galen pulled back the covers with precise movements. Unless you'd rather I sleep in the guest room again? That comment about genetic testing bothered you. He turned to face her. Why would that bother you? Romy got something to hide. Galen, please. She stepped closer, reaching for him. Whatever you think you know. He caught her wrist before she could touch him. Don't we? We need to talk about this. 8 years ago, his grip tightened slightly before you let my brother take over your office. His words burned his throat. Did you laugh about it, you and him? I was such a fool, raising his kids while he played uncle. It wasn't like that. Tears spilled down her cheeks. We never meant to get caught. Galen's laugh was harsh. Well, you did, and now you get to live with the consequences. What are you going to do? He studied her tear-stained face. He'd loved her for 15 years, the face that had lied to him every single day. Do you remember our first date? He was all smiles and charm. He said honesty was the most important thing in a relationship. Gayen, I believed you every word, every promise, every lie. He got closer, watching her shrink back. You and Tate built this perfect little fantasy world where you could have everything. My name, my money, my devotion. But there was a catch. My back. Did you think I'd never find out? I've been playing my part in your sick game for a while now. It's not that simple. She whispered. The children, don't you dare use them as shields. His voice cracked like a whip. You didn't think about them when you were destroying their family. You were letting them call their father uncle for 8 years. We can work this out. She pleaded with him, saying there was no way this was going to work. His eyes were cold, and he told her to get out of his room. This was their room, and he didn't want her in it anymore. She had to leave the next morning. Gayen met with his lawyer, Miranda Chun, in her downtown office. He told her he wanted everything documented, and he slid the envelope of evidence across her desk. He wanted her to know about the affair and the paternity fraud. I want full custody. I want the custody arrangements to acknowledge the biological truth while protecting my legal rights as the children's father. Miranda looked at the photos and DNA results. Her expression grew grim. This is complicated. The DNA tests prove paternity, but you've been a legal father for 8 years. There are precedents. I don't care. Galen's voice was firm. I want to make them pay, every legal avenue, every possible angle. I want them destroyed professionally, financially, socially. Revenge won't make this hurt less. Galen stood looking out over the city skyline. It will make them hurt more, he said. Can you do it? Miranda sighed. Yes, but are you sure this is the best way? How do you want to handle it? A quiet divorce would let them save face and keep their reputations. He turned back to her. They don't deserve that. Mercy, he spent the next week planning every detail. It had to be perfect. Ryan's birthday was approaching, and it was the perfect stage for his revelation. He made dinner reservations at Lame Zone, her favorite restaurant. He invited family and close friends. Close friends made her think he was trying to repair their marriage, but he was actually compiling everything: photos, DNA results, hotel receipts, phone records, a complete documentation of their betrayal. He had it professionally bound with copies for everyone who would attend the dinner. Tate tried calling several times, but Gay let it go to voicemail. Come on, bro, talk to her. I've been feeling a bit weird lately. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Give me a call and we'll sort it out. Even though he's been lying for 8 years, I think we can make it work. The kids have noticed the tension, despite his best efforts to shield them. Why don't you and Mum talk anymore? Emma asked one night as he tucked her in. Galen, smooth her hair, make it dark like Tate's. How had he not seen it sometimes? I'm your dad, I should have noticed. Galen had problems he needed to work through. He was suddenly hit with the question, are you getting divorced like Katie's parents? He didn't know the answer, but he wanted to make sure she remembered something. He wanted her to know that no matter what happened, he would always love her and Lucas more than anything. Even if she and her mum didn't love each other anymore, that would never change. He kissed her forehead, fighting back tears. You and Lucas are the best things in my life. Nothing will ever change that, he told her. Later, alone in his study, Galen reviewed the guest list for the birthday dinner. He had invited their closest friends, her law partners, both their families, and all the people she loved. Whose approval they valued most. His phone buzzed with a text from Romy. Thank you for planning my birthday dinner. It means a lot. He stared at the message, imagining her face when he exposed her lies in front of everyone. Would she cry, beg, try to deny it? He typed back after all. Over the years, you've had it coming. She sent back a heart emoji. He deleted the conversation. Another text came through from Tate. Hey bro, about dinner on Saturday. Can we talk first? Please? Galen's reply was, nothing to talk about. See you at the party. He set his phone down and pulled. He took the bound evidence packets and ran his fingers over the embossed covers. Everything was ready in 3 days. He would destroy the elaborate fiction they'd built. No more lies, no more pretending. Just cold, hard truth and the consequences that came with it. His brother, his wife, his children, who weren't really his, they've taken everything from him. Now he would take everything from them. The evening of Romy's birthday arrived under a blood-red sunset that painted Lausanne's windows in crimson shadows. In his home office, Gayen adjusted his charcoal silk tie in the mirror. Each movement was precise and calculated. The bound Galen had a leather briefcase full of folders of evidence. They documented 8 years of lies and betrayal in clinical detail. His phone buzzed with another desperate text from Tate. It said, please call me before dinner. We need to talk. Galen deleted it without responding. He wanted to let Tate sweat it out. Galen's hands stilled as Tate's small fingers tangled in the blue silk tie, the same shade as the one he wore to Galen's wedding. Can you help? He asked. Galen's hands stilled as Tate's boyish figure appeared in the doorway, wearing the navy suit they'd bought for his school pictures. His dark hair was neatly combed, and every feature that had once brought joy was twisted like a Galen felt a knife in his gut as he knelt down, fixing the tie with practiced movements. The familiar routine felt surreal, knowing what was to come. There was a perfect Lucas beaming up at him. Yours exactly like mine. Galen forced a smile. You look very handsome. Why do we have to dress up? It's just dinner. It was a special night. Gayen smoothed the boy's collar, taking in the moment when everything would change. After tonight, it would be time to celebrate your mom's birthday. Emma appeared behind her brother, wearing the emerald dress Romy had bought her the previous week. Her dark curls were pulled back with a matching ribbon, which highlighted. She looked just like her mother and her real father. Her mom was crying in her room, she said, twisting her hands together, a nervous gesture she'd inherited from Rome. She's been in there forever. Galen's jaw tightened. Is she happy? Emma's brow furrowed because you planned this party. For her, because things are getting better if she only knew. He told them, his voice carefully controlled, we leave in 20 minutes. Can I bring my Nintendo Switch? Lucas asked hopefully, not tonight. This is a fancy restaurant, but I'll be bored. Trust me. Gayen muttered under his breath, Bree. As the kids left, he thought that entertainment wouldn't be a problem. He found Romy in their bedroom, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She was wearing the black designer dress he'd given her last Christmas, her honeyed blonde hair swept up in an elegant twist that exposed her neck, and the diamond necklace he bought for their 10th anniversary. She looked beautiful in the light, like a star. Gayan stepped out of the room and said, "Thank you for this, for trying to fix things, for giving us another chance." "I'm just trying to help." He sounded cold, like he didn't care. It was still early, but the night was just beginning. "There's a lot to work through." She started taking a step towards him, "But this means everything to me." "Are the kids ready?" He cut her off, stepping back before she could touch him. "We don't want to be late." The drive to L Zone was quiet, broken only by the kids chatting about the fancy restaurant. Romy was glancing at him in the passenger seat, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. Galen kept his eyes fixed on the road, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Lucas asked from the back seat, "Will there be cake?" "Of course there will be cake," Emma replied with all the authority of an 8-year-old. Galen thought grimly as they arrived at the private dining room, which was already half full. Ree's law partners stood near the bar with champagne flutes in hand, while their closest friends were clustered around the elegantly set tables. Both sets of parents had arrived. Early, eager to celebrate what they thought was a marriage, Tate stood by the bar nursing a scotch. His designer suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, and his eyes darted nervously between Galen and Romy. "Happy birthday, sis!" He stepped forward to hug Romy carefully. Avoiding Galen's gaze, his voice was too loud and too cheerful. "You look amazing, thanks, Tate." Ree's smile wavered as she glanced at Galen. "You didn't have to come, of course I came. It's family." The word hung in the air like poison. Their mother swooped in, gathering the kids close. "Emma, Lucas, come on. Come and sit with Grandma. You both look really grown up in your fancy clothes, Lucas. That suit makes you look just like your father when he was your age." Galen laughed, his laugh sharp enough to draw attention. "Funny you should say that, Mom." "What do you mean, nothing? Just genetic resemblance is fascinating, isn't it?" Tate's face went pale before he could respond. The waiter arrived to take drink orders. Galen watched it all unfold like a scene in a play. It was like watching a scene from a play, with the happy family, the devoted brother, and the loving wife, all about to come crashing down. He waited until the appetizers were served, and everyone was settled comfortably into their false security, before welcoming everyone. He stood up, raising his glass, and the crystal caught the light, throwing rainbow prisms across the white tablecloth. "Thank you for coming tonight to celebrate my wife's birthday," he said. Romy smiled up at him, tears threatening again. He reached for his hand under the table and moved it away before we started. He carried on, his voice loud and clear through the quiet room. "I'd like to say a few words about family, about trust, about the bonds that tie us together. Or should I say the lies that bind us?" The room fell silent, conversation stopped mid-sentence. Tate's hand tightened on his glass until his knuckles went white. 15 years ago, I married the woman I thought was the love of my life, Galen. His voice was steady and each word was measured and sharp. 8 years ago, we were blessed with our first child. 6 years ago, our second. I thought we had a perfect family. Galen Ree's voice shook. "Please, not here, not here." He smiled coldly. "What happened after another 8 years of lies?" his father demanded. "I'm getting to that," Galen replied, reaching for his briefcase. "I recently made some interesting discoveries about my perfect family." "You want to know what I found, Brother Tate?" Half of it was from his chair. He looked panicked, and I told him to sit down. Galen's voice was harsh. "You played your part long enough. It's time for the truth." He pulled out the bound folders and started passing them around the table. The heavy cream paper made a noise against the tablecloth, like accusations. "Inside these packets, you'll find proof of a betrayal that spans nearly a decade. There are DNA tests and surveillance footage. Photos, hotel receipts, phone records, everything was documented. It was all about the affair between my wife and my brother." There were gasps around the table. Ree's mother covered her mouth with trembling hands. Her father's face turned an alarming shade of purple. "But wait," Galen continued, smiling sharp as broken glass. "There's more. The DNA test revealed something else. It proved that this betrayal goes deeper than just an affair." He turned to his parents, watching their faces. As it sank in, Mom, Dad, those grandchildren you've been doting on, they're not mine, they're Tate's. The room erupted in chaos. His mother burst into tears, collapsing against his father's shoulder. Ram's father stood so quickly, his chair toppled backward with a crash that made everyone jump. What lies are these? Ree's father roared. How dare you open the folder? Richard Galen's voice was calm. See for yourself. Every test was verified by 3 separate labs. The photo was time-stamped, and the receipts and records were all there in black and white. Emma and Lucas were looking at it with wide, confused eyes. Emma's lower lip was trembling and Lucas was saying, "Why is everyone yelling? How could you?" Tate was sitting up in his chair and saying, "I can explain." Galen was looking satisfied. He was looking at his brother's obvious distress. He was looking at his wife, his own flesh and blood. He was looking at the children, who didn't need to hear this. Romy pleaded, reaching for Emma and Lucas. "Please let me take them out. The children need to know the truth." Galen slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal water glasses jump. "They need to know their mother is dead and their uncle is their real father. That's enough.